So these two questions actually repeated a lot on the channel. The first question is, how can I balance my mix when it comes to the low end and the high end? How can I get this mix going and sounding professional? How I can fix my levels? And the second one is actually, how can I use span? Because if you just watch any YouTube tutorial, everybody will be praising for span, and it kind of deserves the praise, but people actually don't know how to use it. And I thought maybe I can just explain one of the easy way to use it when it comes to the mix balancing. But before we start with the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button so that you get notification when we make a new video like this. Other than that, let's bring the balance back to the mix. I thought that it's impossible to actually show you if I don't use any reference track in this case, so I decided to pick my favorite reference track. I just love this track, especially when it comes to how it utilizes the frequency range. It's my style. And the second one is the Gaiji, one of the industry standard when it comes to the melodic techno or progressive house almost, I would say. And the third one is Duo, that actually changes a lot of things in the melodic techno, especially, or the even electronic music, and how that make any sense. The first thing that I would do, all these tracks are mastered. So if I open this up, you will see that it's full of things. So just to balance a little bit, it will still not the same thing before the master, because master also changes the dynamic range and overall volume of different types depending on what is used. But just to make it a bit easier for us, I'm going to bring this down to -6 dB. Why? Because -6 dB is kind of industry standard. You either send your mix, I will say, -6 dB peak or -12 dB peak, but I will say 95% of the time it will be -6 dB peak, so that 6 dB is for your mastering engineer to play around. Okay, we got this. But I'm going to do now put a span on the master channel here so that everything goes through span, I will say. And then this is the Ableton's own spectrum. I will come back to that, explain a bit later on if you just want to use it. But span is free plugin, so you can just download it and use it without any cost. And if I just solo, for example, one of the guys here, we would like to play the What You Need, and if I play it, it will sound like this. And this is how it looks on the span. What you can do, there's a mode here, you can play with, for example, different options, and it will already come with some kind of settings. But other than that, you can also open this up. If you go back to the, let's say, default, let's say for mastering or for mix purposes, you would like to have a bit slower reaction time because you want to see the overall or the average levels in your low and high end. So what I'm going to do, go to this one and increase this a little bit. And the block size is actually how big the resolution is or how precise the resolution is. I'm going to decrease a bit and play again. Like that. It's much easier to understand if you do it this way, so that things stays the same a bit longer. So here again, I'm going to play here. This is where the track actually gets going. So it's kind of a perfect benchmark spot for the track. So if I play here, let's loop it somewhere around here like that. And let's take a look at the span again. I'm going to just volume 0 this down so that I can talk in the meantime. The important thing over here is taking a look at the peak of your kick around here, like it's going up and down here. Let's say -39 dB. And if you look at the high end, where your hi-hats and or your white noises and splashes and the shakers are, is around here. So let's say it's around 43 dB, -43 dB. And what was this one? -39, 38 dB. So this basically means that from your peaking low end to peaking high end, it's around like 4 dB difference, 4 or 5 dB difference. And this is kind of the industry standards. Like, again, most of the tracks, the professional ones, will have similar frequency response when you just put a span on top of that. So they will have like a peaking low end somewhere around here, and then peaking high end somewhere around here. The important thing here is the relativity. So I wouldn't really care about like if it is peaking here or there. I will be more interested on the relative difference of each sound. So the industry standard, or the most common, I wouldn't call it industry standard, but I would call the most common differences between, let's say, 3 to 9 dB. So in that area, it will be like your high end will be 3 to 9 dB lower than your low end. And it's common. This is common really for progressive house, techno. Techno could be a bit different, like especially the heavy techno, but the regular techno will follow the rule, and the melodic techno as well. But that doesn't mean that the standards can change. So I'm gonna play with the Gaiji because his tracks tend to be a bit brighter, a bit more like happier, a bit airish. So let's play this guy's soundtrack. Let me put this up again so that, oops, you can hear back again. Let's put it down again. So take a look what happens here. So his high end curve goes a bit sharper, and it actually peaks a bit more after 10K, which gives this really bright sound to the track. And you will see that his levels, like this one is around 42 and this one is around 41, minus 41, almost 40, a little bit low. So the peak level is just 1 or 2 dB most of the times. And this is the reason his track sounds a bit, let's say, livelier, a bit more upbeat, a bit more airy. So he's just pushing the high end a bit more than your kind of industry standard. And he's also pushing much higher end, like above 10K more. This is one single track. Of course, he has tracks different from then, and then he could have completely different frequency response. But if you think about it, this is how it sounds. And I would like to take a look now at the Mannheim sound, because their sound is actually pretty different. And this is my favorite track from the Mannheim, actually. Mannheim. I really enjoy this track simply because of the synth, of course. I'm a synth head, so I like sound design, and this one is quite nice one. So if I play this one, take a look. And if I play here, and there. And let's go back again and go back to our span and take a look what happens now. Your low end is way below, way below, and it will keep a bit going up and down in the end, but it will be like much more below than over low end. And actually you will see the similar response from, let's say, recondite tracks as well. Take a look at the recondite tracks, for example. Put a span master and take a look the overall level difference between his high and low end. And the Mannheim does time to time, not always. They does it especially when they have kind of more ambient track. So reason being, again, if we take a look up this guy over here and take a look one more time. So reason being, if you utilize this type of frequency response, or this, if you utilize your frequencies like this, your track will sound darker. And that's exactly what Mannheim goes for in this track. So again, if I saw this, and they have this big break, it goes completely like ambience, and they take away the hi-hats completely here. And comes back again, and if you go back, you will see it's still really dark. So what is the takeaway over here? I would suggest you to start with the like regular industrial standards, or at least understand how balance works. Try to keep the things between -3, -9 dB difference between low end and high end. And once you know how it sounds, how the standard or the common way sounds, and then from there you can look for your sound. So what I'm trying to say, this is your standard. For example, Gaiji prefer like a louder high end to get this livelier sound. On the other hand, Afterlife tracks, or the Mannheim in this case, prefer, for example, a lower high end to give this kind of ambient sound. So what does that mean? That means that just go for your own sound once you know the standards, or once you know how it works. But I'm going to show you now like how I use it. I'm gonna just open up tutorial that I was working on. I'm sure there will be a lot of people now. Give us that tutorial now. I will. This was actually asked by one of my patrons again, and he will get the tutorial first, and afterwards you guys will see it on the YouTube as well. What I'm doing here, because I think for the guide G track you have to get this low end and high end nailed. So I'm using two different reference track over here, but let me play it so that you can hear how it sounds. Right? Quite dancey, quite lovely sounding thing. But if I were to use span now and balance my track a little bit, what I would do, let's mess up the levels first to start with. Let's push this down a little bit so that we have a random starting point. And I think my low end is here. Let's push this a little bit up so that it gets loud. Play again. Immediately, like this doesn't sound like IG because it's too dark. And you also see it on the frequency response. You see? Too much difference. It's much closer to the methane sound and the Gaiji sound. And what does bring us to the most of the things you don't even need to do, you just need to play with the levels. So what I'm going to do now, one more thing by the way, putting into this, sending this one to the mastering engineer will change the levels as well, because probably if I am the one who's mastering this track, I will see this. And I will just throw a multiband compression on the low end and compress that low end, and because it's too loud. And what I'm trying to say, even if I put a Pro, you will see that kick is always louder, and if I try to push into the limiter, kick will just jump into the trigger delimiter, and then the sounds will get really weird. So let me show you. You see this kick? This is basically kick and low end hitting. If I push this, I'm just compressing pushing the kick or the low end into that. So what I would probably prefer for this case, so getting something like this, right? Putting it here, play it again, put this down and put the range down. You see what's happening? I'm really compressing quite a lot, so I will probably not do that much, but something like this to start with. But anyway, that is not our topic. Our topic is just balancing this one. So like this, what I would do, bring this down. Let's solo this. I like to fix my low end again -6 dB, because it's where I start my mastering, or what I expect from my clients to send me their track, so that I can do the mastering. So fast, -6 dB. It doesn't need to be exactly -6 dB. As long as it hits around there is fine, right? We got this. Let's go to the hi-hats. Let's play that. Let's open up the span if I wish to. Again, you should, if you're experienced, you will hear it immediately. You don't need span to actually fix this one. But just for the tutorial, I want to show it visually as well so that you understand. You can also see that we have actually 2 resonant frequencies. It depends on your taste. Maybe you can take them off, but for my ears at the moment, it sounds actually just fine. And let's put the way we did it before. Let's put this block size somewhere around here. Increase the average time. Take a look again. Maybe it's higher. Or if you don't want to do it, like this. Yeah. I mean, you can definitely go a bit higher, but just think about when we have the synths and so on, they will also have a slight high end, so it will be boost a bit more. So you can start maybe -6 to 9 dB in the beginning. Once you add your synths and so on, it may also boost your high end a little bit, because especially if you're opening the cutoff, they will have a lot of high end. Yeah, but I think that's it. I hope you understand what I mean and how you can use span. Again, I wanted to show you the standard way, and then the guys who was actually doing the way they wanted and finding their own sound. So I would really assume that you should do the same. Start with the standard and then carve your own sound. Do whatever you want once you know how it is made. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you learned something. And I will catch you in the next video. Goodbye.